There was a house at the end of a quiet street where sunlight always seemed to hit the top floor just right, making the bedroom windows glow like golden mirrors. In that house lived 4 sisters, each more radiant than the last, their most unifying feature being the thick, glossy, curly blonde hair they all inherited from their mother. It fell past their shoulders in coils of light, catching the sun like spun gold. The oldest was Annalise, just shy of 23, graceful and commanding. Then came Clara, 21, thoughtful with a romantic heart. Elise, 20, sharp and full of mischief. And the youngest, Livia, 18, headstrong and a little wild. Though they were vastly different in temperament, their shared obsession made them inseparable: their hair. They spent hours in front of mirrors, brushing and braiding, twisting curls around their fingers while swapping dreams. They talked about dyeing it strawberry blonde, getting platinum streaks, or even going jet black. Some nights they sat in a circle on the floor flipping through old-fashioned magazines, pointing to celebrities and models and debating what would look best on each of them. Annalise had gotten a perm once, tightening her already curly mane into polished ringlets, and they'd all adored the change. They begged their mother often. "Just let us try something new, please," they'd whine in harmony. But their mother, Johanna, was strict and frugal. She had once been indulgent and playful when she was young, but life and bills and single motherhood had pressed all the softness out of her. "I'm not wasting money on bleach and curlers," she'd snap, folding laundry. "You're lucky you've got beautiful hair. Don't start ruining it with chemicals and nonsense." Still they pushed. Daily, the sisters didn't stop. If anything, the rejection made them more relentless. "Why can't we just trim it?" Clara complained one evening as they sat at the dinner table twirling her fork and her spaghetti. "Not even dye it. Just layers. It would look amazing." "I'd kill for copper red streaks," Elise murmured dreamily, resting her chin in her palm. "Or even just one bold strip. Maybe over one eye. Like that photo of the French model." Johanna sighed heavily. She didn't even look up from her bowl. "You sound like children. You're grown women. Grow out of this obsession." Livia scoffed. "So we're grown enough to do everything else, but not to choose how our hair looks?" The room fell silent. "You have no idea how much money I've spent raising you for," Johanna muttered, her voice dangerously calm. "Food, clothes, school books, heating, and all I get in return is you whining about wanting to look like some pop star." Annalise tried to diffuse things, as always. "Mom, it's not just vanity. It's identity. Expression. We're not asking you to pay for some $300 salon. We'll do it ourselves if we have to." "You will not," Johanna snapped. Her eyes burned with something old and deep. "You girls don't realize how lucky you are. That hair is rare. Beautiful. People pay fortunes to look like you. And you want to chop it up, dye it like clowns just to stand out for 5 minutes? You don't appreciate what you've been given." The daughters exchanged glances. The tension had grown into a wall. Later that night, while brushing each other's hair in the attic bedroom they shared, the grumbling returned. "She acts like she owns us," Elise whispered. "She acts like our hair is hers," Livia said, curling her fingers into a fist, "like it's some kind of trophy she controls." Annalise was quiet. Her face was pensive, but she didn't speak. She had always been close with their mother and didn't want to believe things were really that bad. The next morning, Elise wore her frustration like perfume. She brought up pink dye at breakfast. Johanna said nothing, just stared, and then left the room. The house was quiet after lunch. Too quiet. Elise was sitting on the windowsill, reading. Clara was painting her nails. Annalise was folding towels. Livia was texting. They all froze when they heard the creak of the kitchen door swinging open. "Girls," Johanna called. "Come downstairs." Her tone was steady. Too steady. They filed in one by one, and that's when they saw it. In the center of the kitchen, pushed out from the table, was a wooden chair. Next to it, on the counter, lay a large silver PVC barber cape, neatly folded, its shine catching the afternoon sun. And beside it, heavy black clippers already plugged in. The air shifted. Everything became still. "Sit down," Johanna said. They stared at her in disbelief. "What?" Elise managed to say. Johanna didn't repeat herself. Her eyes flicked to Annalise. "You're the eldest, you start." Annalise shook her head slowly. "Mom, this isn't funny. You girls want to experiment? Want to do something bold and wild with your hair? Let me help." Without another word, Johanna stepped forward and grabbed the silver cape. She snapped it open with one swift motion, the sound loud and final. Then, before anyone could stop her, she reached behind the door and produced a roll of gray tape. Wide duct tape. "No," Clara whispered. "You're not serious." But she was. Johanna walked to Annalise, who was frozen in place. "Sit," she said again. "You wanted change." "No, Mom, this isn't—" But Johanna grabbed her wrist. "Sit." And Annalise did. The wooden chair creaked as she lowered herself into it. Johanna yanked her thick golden curls behind her shoulders and wrapped the silver cape around her. It swallowed her frame like a sheet of armor, gleaming and silent. She fastened it tight at the back, letting it cascade down over Annalise's knees. The tape came next. She ripped off a long strip and pressed it firmly across Annalise's mouth before she could protest again. The eldest sister's eyes welled up instantly. Clara gasped. Livia took a step forward, but Johanna flicked on the clippers. The buzzing filled the room. The sound of the clippers roared in the girls' ears, a low electric hum that felt more threatening than any shouting ever could. Annalise sat stiff in the chair, wrapped in silver, the tape across her mouth making her breath heavy and uneven. Her golden curls spilled over her shoulders and chest, resting atop the shiny cape like a halo. Her sisters stood frozen, Clara's nails still wet with polish, Elise trembling, and Livia wide-eyed in disbelief. Johanna held the clippers high, letting them buzz inches from Annalise's scalp, not yet touching. Her gaze was sharp, her posture calm, not angry anymore, resolved, like a punishment had been decided and now must simply be carried out. Then, click. She pressed the lever on the clippers, and without a word, she placed her left hand on Annalise's forehead to steady her daughter's head. With the clippers in her right hand, Johanna slowly, deliberately pushed the blades right down the middle of Annalise's scalp. The sound changed instantly. Frrrp, as the teeth met thick hair and sheared through it. A wide path of pale, bare scalp appeared, splitting Annalise's golden crown in two. Curls spilled onto the cape like vines cut from a wall. Annalise squeezed her eyes shut. Tears rolled down her cheeks, slipping beneath the edge of the tape. Her body tensed, but she didn't move. Couldn't move. Her breath came in short bursts through her nose. "Oh my God," Elise whispered. "She's really doing it." Clara took a step back, covering her mouth with both hands. But Johanna didn't pause. She brought the clippers back to the front and mowed another pass, right next to the first, widening the strip of bare scalp. The blades hummed louder, almost triumphant now. With each stroke, more of Annalise's beauty fell in defeated coils. Hair tumbled down her chest and pooled in the lap of the silver cape. The glimmering surface beneath the hair made it look like her golden locks were falling into a frozen pond. Left, right, back again. The mother worked efficiently, clearing a path over the crown, behind the ears, down the nape. She tilted Annalise's head forward and drove the clippers up the back of her neck in clean, relentless lines. Soon, only tufts remained along the sides. Johanna pressed Annalise's head to one side and clipped carefully around her ear, revealing soft, untouched skin. The girls had never seen their sister's scalp, never imagined it could look so small, so bare. The only sound in the room was the buzz of the clippers and the quiet, slow drip of tears hitting the floor. When Johanna finished the last pass, she flicked off the machine with a sharp snap and set it on the counter. Annalise sat motionless. Her head was entirely bald, pale and smooth, with faint lines where the curls once parted. Her ears looked larger now, exposed. She blinked, her lashes wet. The silver cape, once sleek and clean, was now buried under thick golden curls. Johanna slowly peeled the tape from her mouth. Annalise gasped in air but didn't speak. She stood up shakily. The cape slid off her shoulders and onto the floor, taking the hair with it in a quiet avalanche. Her bare scalp gleamed in the light. No one spoke. Then Johanna pointed to Clara. "You're next." Clara did not move. Her lips trembled as Johanna slowly walked to the counter, shook the golden hair from the silver cape with a sharp snap, and folded it neatly again. The clippers were already humming once more. The sound buzzed against Clara's bones. "Mom," Clara said, her voice breaking. "Please don't." But Johanna had already turned toward her, silver cape draped over one arm, clippers in hand like a priest holding sacred tools before a ritual. "Sit," she said. "I don't want this," Clara shrieked. "You begged me for change," Johanna said quietly. "And I listened." Elise reached for Clara's hand. "Don't. She can't make us." But Johanna was faster. With a surprising burst of strength, she stepped forward, took Clara by the wrist, and guided her, almost too gently, to the wooden chair. Clara didn't resist. Her legs wobbled beneath her. She lowered herself shakily into the seat. "No tape this time," Johanna said. "You can cry all you want." Clara stared up at her, tears already flowing. "Why are you doing this?" Johanna didn't answer. Instead, she flicked the silver PVC cape wide again and swept it over Clara's shoulders. It rustled as it settled down her chest and legs. She fastened the neck with slow precision, snug and final. Clara's blonde curls tumbled down her back in silky spirals. The cape's bright shine reflected them like mirrors. Johanna walked behind her, combed the hair briefly with her fingers, then set her left palm on Clara's crown. The buzzing clippers came into view again. "Please stop," Clara whimpered. Without warning, Johanna placed the clippers at Clara's right temple and dragged them straight back across her scalp. The vibration jolted Clara's body. A thick rope of blonde hair broke away instantly and tumbled down her shoulder onto the cape. The girls gasped again. "No, no, no," Clara sobbed, but Johanna made the second pass, this time directly down the middle. Clara's scalp began to show in long, exposed tracks. The shiny white skin beneath looked ghostly against the remaining hair. "Oh my God," Livia murmured, her voice dry. "She's really shaving all of us." The clippers continued to devour the golden locks. Johanna pressed Clara's head forward and drove the machine up the back of her neck in confident, controlled strokes. Curl after curl fell like wet ribbon onto the cape and the floor. Clara trembled. She was crying openly now, loud, gasping sobs that shook her shoulders beneath the cape. "It's okay," Elise whispered, unsure if it was meant for Clara or for herself. Hair collected fast. At her shoulders, her chest, between her knees. The silver cape looked like a mountain of shed curls. Soon Clara's hairline was no more. Her pale scalp gleamed in jagged lines where the clippers had passed. Johanna clipped around her ears, holding her head firmly as more soft locks fell. Pass after pass, the last traces of femininity disappeared. There were no stylish undercuts or pixie fringes. No finesse. Just baldness. Raw and total. When the final pass was made, Johanna flicked off the clippers, their hum dying with a mechanical sigh. Clara sat still, her chest heaving, the skin of her bare head glistening under the overhead light. A few tufts clung stubbornly to the nape, but they were swept away with a final swipe of the blade. Johanna unfastened the cape. It peeled open like armor unlatched. Clara stood, shaking, and the cape slid from her to the floor in a rustle, releasing an avalanche of golden strands. She covered her face and ran from the kitchen in silence. Elise and Livia stood in stunned horror. Their eyes locked. There were only two left, and the clippers were still buzzing in Johanna's hands. The clippers buzzed again, constant and droning like a siren inside Elise's skull. She backed away instinctively, pressing herself against the kitchen wall. "No," she said, "you're not doing that to me." Johanna calmly bent over, gathered the curls from the floor into a neat pile beside the chair, and gave the silver PVC cape a firm shake. Clara's and Annalise's hair separated in the air like gold confetti before settling back into a heap of beauty lost. "Elise," Johanna said firmly, "don't make me drag you." I didn't agree to this. None of us agreed. Elise's voice cracked. She was shaking from her fingertips to her knees. Johanna's face didn't change. You all wanted a change. You all pushed. I warned you again and again, and now this is the change. Elise turned toward the hallway, hoping to flee, but Livia's hand caught hers. Not to stop her, but to squeeze. If you run, she'll still find you, Livia whispered, pale as a ghost. Just be brave. I'm not brave, Elise whispered back. I was never brave. Her legs moved anyway. Somehow she walked, like a puppet, to the chair. Her steps were wooden, each one felt like a surrender. She sat down slowly, carefully, like a prisoner sitting for judgment. Livia was shaking. Not her hands, not her voice. Her entire body. She stood barefoot in the middle of the kitchen, watching the clippers fall silent in their mother's hand. The silver cape had slid off Elise and now lay bunched at the base of the chair like a silken puddle filled with the golden remains of the girls who had gone before her. 3 sisters, 3 bald heads, 3 piles of thick curly blonde hair now limp and lifeless on the floor. And now only she remained. The youngest, the last. No, Livia whispered, her fists clenched at her sides. You're not going to do that to me. Johanna didn't respond. She didn't need to. The silver cape was already in her hands again, being snapped clean of hair. She smoothed it flat with her palm, slowly, almost meditatively. I said no, Livia shouted, louder now. Her voice cracked under the weight of dread. I didn't agree to this. I never said I wanted this. I never would have wanted this. You said you wanted change, Johanna said coolly. You all said it. And change isn't always easy. Sometimes it's ugly. Sometimes it's about learning a lesson. Lesson? You think shaving your daughter's bald is a lesson? She cried. Johanna met her gaze, eyes dark and flat. It's not punishment. It's clarity. Livia took a step back toward the hallway. You'll have to chase me. You'll have to hold me down. Johanna didn't move. And that's when Elise stepped quietly back into the doorway. Her head was bare and red in patches. Her cheeks tear-streaked. Her hands still clutched the curl she'd saved. But her eyes were different now. Dry. Still and empty. You'll just make it worse, she whispered to Livia. She'll catch you anyway. Please, Livia begged, voice wobbling. Please, someone stop this. But no one moved. Clara was sitting silently on the stairs, arms wrapped around her knees. Annalise stood near the back door, arms folded tightly across her chest, jaw set like stone. All 3 bald, all 3 defeated. And the clippers roared back to life. The sound made Livia's knees buckle. Johanna stepped forward and held out the silver cape. Sit down, Livia, she said. You are not above your sisters. Livia let out a long, shaking breath. Her lip quivered. She took one small, tentative step forward, then another, and then she sat. The chair creaked softly beneath her. She closed her eyes as the cape was wrapped around her shoulders. Its slippery, clinical weight instantly made her feel small, childish, as if she were being prepped for surgery. Her curls were tighter than the others. Her hair had more bounce, more spring. It had always been her favorite feature. Boys had loved it. Her sisters had envied it. And now, it would be taken. Please be gentle, she whispered, her eyes still closed. But her mother didn't reply. Instead, she pressed Livia's head slightly downward, revealing the nape of her neck, and the clippers buzzed louder, then met her skin. The vibration made Livia twitch. She felt the first long stroke. Warm metal, coarse teeth, pushed up from the base of her neck to her crown. She heard the unmistakable flup as the first heavy lock of hair dropped from her head and rolled down the front of the cape. She opened her eyes just in time to see it tumble off her lap and land softly on the pile of her sister's curls. No, she sobbed. Please, no. But Johanna kept going. Long, sweeping strokes mowed through the soft coils with mechanical efficiency. The curls gave little resistance. They surrendered one by one, falling in fat clumps and bouncing off the PVC with dull pats. From the nape, Johanna moved to the sides. She tilted Livia's head gently, revealing her soft, pale temples. The buzzing teeth roared past her ears, and she felt the cold air hit places it had never touched before. The curls continued to fall. Her lap grew full. The cape glittered beneath them like metal under snow. When Johanna reached the top of Livia's crown, she didn't pause. She planted her palm on the front of Livia's head and drove the clippers backward. A thick coil of hair, wide and heavy, landed on the cape with a soft flap. Livia sobbed harder, snot running down her nose, her breath breaking in gasps. Her hands, pinned beneath the cape, clenched into fists. More passes followed, left to right, front to back. Clumps of her identity fell in every direction. Within minutes, her scalp was bare, the buzzing stopped. Livia couldn't look at anyone. She couldn't breathe. She couldn't think. Her head felt numb, almost like it didn't belong to her anymore. The silver cape was pulled away slowly, and her curls slid down her legs in a golden cascade. She sat there, naked from the neck up, eyes closed, chest heaving. Then she stood, and she ran. 3 daughters shaved, 3 sisters bald and broken, and their mother, silent in the center of the wreckage, the clippers still warm in her hands. But the story wasn't over, because the sisters were no light and neither just victims. And revenge was coming. Certainly. Here's the next part of the story, the shift in tone as the daughters, still raw and stunned from their transformation, begin to process what happened. And slowly, together, decide to take revenge. Part 8, the turning point. A plan in the silence. For a long time, the house was silent. Not the usual kind of silence after a fight or a bad day. This was thick, suffocating, like a fog that crept through the walls and made everything feel suspended in air. The girls had gone to their rooms, separately, quietly. They didn't speak to their mother that evening. Johanna made no dinner. No apologies, no explanations. She simply wiped the kitchen floor clean of the hair piles, folded the silver PVC cape neatly again, and placed the clippers back in the drawer, as though it had all been a task she'd completed. A box checked. But something had changed. Not just in their appearances, or in their mother's mind. Something had shifted in them, in each of the sisters. The shame was now giving way to something more focused, something sharper. They met later that night, in the attic room where they used to braid each other's hair. Now, they sat cross-legged in pajamas, heads smooth, pale and bare. The air between them was fragile. Livia spoke first, her voice low and hollow. "She shaved us." Clara nodded. "I still don't know if it was real. I keep waiting to wake up." "She didn't even cry," Elise said softly, still holding the single curl she'd saved, now limp and dried in her palm. Annalise had remained quiet for most of the evening, but now she lifted her chin. "We have to do it back." The room went still. Clara blinked. "You mean, she needs to understand," Annalise said. Her voice was firm now. "She thinks she taught us something? Let's return the favor." "I want to," Elise whispered, surprised by her own words. Livia sat up straighter. "We'll make her sit in the chair. Make her wear that cape. Just like we had to." "She doesn't want us wasting money on hairstyles?" Clara said bitterly. "Fine. Then none of us will have any." They looked at each other, and for the first time that day, they smiled. It was a dark, furious smile. A smile made of shared betrayal and a thirst for justice. The sisters didn't sleep that night. They waited. Johanna awoke early as usual. She descended the stairs, heading to the kitchen to start the coffee. But when she opened the door, she stopped cold. The silver chair had been placed dead center in the room. Next to it sat the silver PVC cape. And the clippers, waiting. The 3 eldest daughters stood in a row. Elise held the cape in both hands. Annalise held the clippers. Livia stood by the door. Johanna narrowed her eyes. "What is this?" "It's your turn," Clara said, stepping into the room from behind. "You're not serious." Annalise took a step forward. "You made all of us do it. All of us cry. You shaved us to teach us a lesson. So let's make it a shared one." Johanna folded her arms. "I am your mother." You are our equal now, Livia snapped. We're all bald, remember? No one's above the others. There was a long pause. Johanna stared at them, her mouth set in a hard line. Sit, Clara said. When Johanna didn't move, Elise spoke. We'll tie you down if we have to. Johanna blinked. For the first time, she looked unsure. She glanced at the clippers, the cape, the chair, then she walked toward it, slowly, and sat down. The chair groaned under her weight. She didn't fight. Maybe she knew she deserved it. Elise stepped forward and, without a word, swept the silver PVC cape over her mother's shoulders. It snapped around her neck with the familiar plasticky hiss. She fastened it tight. Clara stood behind the chair, combing through Johanna's thick blonde hair. The same texture they all had once admired. It was long, down to her mid-back, in tidy waves. Slightly duller than theirs, but still undeniably striking. Johanna's jaw was tight. She said nothing. Annalise flicked the clippers on. T-T. The sound filled the room. This time, it was theirs. She stepped behind her mother, placed her hand firmly on Johanna's crown, just like Johanna had done to them. Let's begin, she whispered. And she drove the clippers down the middle.